Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, who are here to talk Seahawks football. We have finally made it to the eve of training camp and meaningful football for all Seahawks fans and us, because we've been talking about nothing but essentially speculation and just kind of some made up stuff from February 1st on, relatively. And it's always nice to get to this part of the year because this is where it all counts now. And the Seahawks look to be in pretty decent shape heading into training camp. We've got all the rookies signed. There was a little bit of drama about all these second-round picks across the NFL. Nwari ended up with a fully guaranteed deal at pick 35, which is unprecedented. And then Arroyo came in at about 85% guaranteed. So I think that trend will continue over time, and we'll probably see the full second round guaranteed at some point in the next 2 or 3 years. It just seems out of control, but also you have to be able to play the game as a GM, and John Schneider kind of folded on that one. What did you think about that aspect of things? And welcome in, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it was a little unexpected at just like a fully guaranteed contract for a second round pick. That's been something that first round picks have kind of enjoyed. For a little bit now, but now it's drifting down into the second round. There'll be some pushback by teams at some point, because if it continues to drift down, it's like our third round pick's going to ask for it, and they're not going to be maybe third. I don't know. There gets to be a point where there are guys that are going to be drafted in pick some round that don't make the roster. We've seen that. We've seen fourth round picks fail to make rosters, and so GMs aren't going to be willing to continue this trend and let it get down into a point where they're not fully confident in. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to continue. How often does a second round pick not make a team? Like, that'll always make the team. So it's not really a big deal that they would let this become a thing where a guy like Nwari would get a fully guaranteed contract. He's going to make the roster. That's a guarantee. So what's wrong with guaranteeing the contract? And so, but it's as you get further down, it's
4-year guarantee. I mean, it's not just guaranteed this year; it's guaranteed for the next 4 years, and sometimes
it is. But from what I was reading, it's like guaranteed for injury. Like if he doesn't make the roster because of, or you know what I mean? Like he's unable to play because of injury, he still gets his full, contract. And it's not like if he would have, if he's just getting fully healthy and getting cut, he'll get paid the next year because it was an injury that happened, but not forever. And so at least that's how I read what it was. It was an injury guarantee more than a performance guarantee, but yeah, just that much guarantee for a person who's never put on never stepped on a field at the NFL level it's a little concerning.
It's a nice problem to have if you're a up and coming NFL player. So, like I said, all that drama is behind us, or potentially it could have been drama. Had that extended into training camp. We've seen that before. It's never a good thing. Your player ends up falling behind a little bit. It just kind of, doesn't feel right. You want a unified team at training camp. That's what it's all about. And looks like we're gonna have that this year. In fact, I would say, before we kind of get into the general preview, and we're going to talk about players, we're going to talk about kind of the back end of the roster. We're going to talk about who's a lock to make the roster, but also those intriguing players on the back end who may show up, who may pop. I was going to say, it's kind of nice. I get the feeling this year, and once in a while, you just have those spidery senses that this team is going to be special. And one of those things that gives that for me is just how Mike Macdonald approaches this team. He puts all those players in a position to be successful. Everyone's on the same page as far as the messaging. And you're hearing the leadership kind of emerge from the players, like Leonard Williams and Ernest Jones on the defense. On the offense, we haven't heard too much from Darnold, but I would imagine he kind of steps into that role as well as more press conferences that he gets. I think you'll see that. And Njigba from the wide receiver spot, and Cooper Kupp. And so I think the team's in pretty decent hands, and everyone's kind of got a mission. And you kind of feel that, at least I do, Keith, where they're like playoffs or bust. Like, this isn't a team that's going to say, well, this is where we're at, and we're really trying to do this, and we need more of this. This team feels ready. The players feel like it's ready, and that's kind of the mission. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it really does feel that way. This isn't oh, hey, we're rebuilding, we'll see. They believe. And do they believe they're, Super Bowl contenders? I don't know. But the playoffs, absolutely. And they should. This is that time of year. Like you need to be focused and being like, hey, that's our goal. We are going to compete in this division. We're going to make the playoff. And there has to be a sense of urgency about everything that's going on in order to make all of this work.
So, we're going to have 3 preseason games. Starts August 7th with the Raiders coming to town. The Chiefs follow them a week later, and then the Packers on August 23rd for that last and final preseason game. Before that game, though, they've agreed to do joint practices ahead of that in Green Bay. So that'll be kind of an interesting storyline as well. 2 weeks after that final is when the regular season starts, September 7th, with the 49ers visiting the Seahawks at home. Okay, so let's talk about position groups. We usually just kind of go through each one and talk about our individual players, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. Let's start on the offense, and let's start at the quarterback position. There's some intrigue there, but I don't think there's any intrigue as far as who's the starter. It's the intrigue as in, let's see this shiny new package we have in our rookie Jalen Milroe and try to get a preview of what we might be able to expect with this player. And I think it's going to end up generating a lot of excitement in training camp. What are your thoughts?
I think so too. I think we're going to see lots of fun stuff. We're going to see, guys doing things that, by guys, I mean, Milroe doing things that, are kind of not used to and getting people excited and all that. But buzz in camp and on-field stuff once the season begins are different. I think that, they're going to have packages for him. He's going to do some things. It's going to be exciting, but let's not start talking about him as, beating out Sam Darnold for the starting job. Like, I don't think that's something that we need to be discussing at this point, or really any point during training camp.
I think both of us and most people realize now that we are going to carry 3 quarterbacks on this roster on the 53. So there's no chance that he gets picked off of a practice squad type of a deal, or Drew Lock. No, Drew Lock's not going to be on a practice squad. He's not going to. He wouldn't last. There's too many teams that need good quality backup quarterbacks in this league, or a potential starter if somebody goes down. So all 3 of our quarterbacks need to be protected, and so that position group is pretty well locked in. Not pretty well, just is. And but the fun aspect of it, seeing Darnold operate in the offense, it's going to be fairly vanilla all through training camp, all through preseason games, and so forth. What do you want to see out of Sam Darnold that would make you feel just really good about him as a quarterback heading into 2025?
I just want to see him operating the offense, like having full control of everything. being able to come in and make his reads, do what he needs to do, commanding the offense in all phases during the 11-on-11 parts of practice, and just having everything be completely locked in and knowing the offense. I don't want to see any kind of like, hey, he's still figuring this out kind of stuff. He's a veteran at this point, and he's worked in a system that's very, very similar to this. He needs to be up to speed, and so I'm hoping we're going to see that. I'm excited that we're going to get a chance to see that and know what we've got going into the regular season.
Yeah. So let's group the fullbacks and the running backs together, and let's talk about this group. And I think there's a couple battles there that are worth talking about as well. Brady Russell, Robbie Oots, the draft pick out of Alabama, are listed as our fullbacks. The team is going to have a fullback on the roster this year, so one of those two are going to make the cut. Let's stay on the fullback spot before we move to the running backs. What are your thoughts about having a fullback in an offense for the first time in a long time? And what does that mean? Like, what are we talking about here as far as an impact on the field?
Well, I mean, it's a throwback. Most NFL teams no longer carry a fullback. Teams used to have them. Sometimes they would have a backup fullback, and it's a lead blocker or someone who goes through the hole before the running back. The last time the Seahawks had a fullback was it Michael Robinson, or they tried to pick one up after Michael Robinson, the 300-pound former defensive end, and I don't remember which came first, but it's been a while, and I am kind of interested to see what that does. It gives you a bigger body, a better blocker in the backfield, so that way they, when you need to pick up a blitz or that kind of stuff in your lineup, and either in the eye or an offset eye, that kind of thing, you have you have a better blocker in there to do the blitz pickup, and then you can let your running back go run a route, and that's kind of cool to have.
Yeah, so let's talk about Brady Russell and Robbie Oots. Specifically, Brady Russell's been around for a little bit. I think this is his third season hanging around the roster. Some of that's been on the practice squad. Some of that's been on the active. He's been a great special teams contributor, a little undersized for a true tight end, but as a fullback guy, he's very intriguing. He's got a good work ethic. He's been around. Team is very familiar with him. That's an advantage for him, right? But Robbie Oots, also from Alabama, if you go watch the tape on him, he's just a throwback kind of player. He can play tight end for you as well. Just so that doesn't really give Brady Russell the leg up as far as that diversity kind of switching back and forth. But as a fullback, Robbie Oots has got more experience right now than Brady Russell does. Although Brady Russell did play some spot snaps as a fullback in last year's offense. They just didn't use it very much, but he was back there for about 10, 11 snaps. What do you expect from that competition, and why?
Well, I expect Brady Russell to be kind of start out as kind of the one, and Robbie Oots as the two, just because experience and you kind of go with the veteran a little bit early on. But honestly, as training camp progresses, if Robbie Oots doesn't win this job outright fairly quickly, I'll be surprised. They had Russell on the roster. They chose to draft Oots. It really felt like, okay, so switching Brady Russell to fullback was the draft hedge in case they didn't get that thing figured out, but then they got it figured out in the draft. And so I kind of just expect it to run that way. Brady Russell surprised us in the past. He might surprise us here, but all indication is that Robbie Utz is going to be the guy, and I'm okay with that too. He's significantly younger. He's significantly cheaper. He's under team control for 4 years. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that they would go with the younger player.
And the intriguing thing about Jalen Milroe and Robbie Utz potentially as being the guy they keep, that's two positions that they need to account for that they didn't have last year on the roster.
Yeah, two spots on the 53 that just got used up by positions that weren't there in the past.
Yeah. So that could impact both sides of the ball, and we'll see how that goes. And today, by the way, we're not doing a roster prediction necessarily. We're just talking about how this may look during training camp. We'll definitely do a roster prediction show, I think, as we get closer to the regular season before the cutdowns. Mm-hmm. Running backs, intriguing at the bottom of this room. At the top, we're fairly solid if Ken Walker comes in healthy and stays healthy. I think he's got a great opportunity, Keith, to really show out this year in this wide zone. I just watched a YouTube video that Ken published about some off-season workouts. He was working out with Tyler Lockett in Dallas, and it was good to see him working out, running routes, catching balls, making cuts, seemingly fully healthy. So that's good news. And then Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, Damien Martinez, George Holani, Jacardia Wright round out that thing. What do you see with the rest of those guys, and where do you think it falls out?
Well, I think you're looking at, you're right, the top two guys are set. The next two guys with McIntosh and Martinez seem like that's kind of going to be a fun battle. Holani wants to insert himself into that conversation, but beyond that, you have camp bodies that are taking reps because the defense needs, you got to have more ball carriers than that for the defense to get their reps in. I think you're looking at, with the 5 guys I mentioned, competing for 4 spots, and 2 of them are guaranteed. And so really it's 2 spots for those other 3. And someone's going to be on the odd man out. And it comes down to, who does the team think they can get through onto the practice squad, like through waivers, easiest. And whoever that is probably out of a job, at least at the beginning of the season. And if I had to guess, it would be, it's going to be George Holani.
Oh, yeah. Unless there's an injury. I agree.
Unless there's an injury, yeah.
Now, for me, just seeing these guys in the scheme, even if it's a vanilla scheme, they're still going to run some wide zone stuff. That's who they are, right? It's not like they're going to be able to run plays in preseason games that are far away from where they're going to be as an offense. That's their identity. They want to get some practice in running some of those plays. Who is going to, at the end of the day, if it's not Ken Walker, out of Charbonnet, McIntosh, and Martinez, who has the opportunity to really emerge as the best fit in this scheme?
Probably Martinez. I like his speed, combination of speed and downhill power. Maybe not the most agile guy, but I think that, put your foot in the ground and go. I think he has the biggest opportunity to emerge as a guy who could really excel. I like Kenny McIntosh. I like what he does as far as a lot of different things, his work ethic, all of that stuff. But I don't necessarily see him as a guy that's going to, just demand being snaps at any point. He'll be good when he fills in, but I don't see him standing up and just demanding snaps and being hard to keep off the field. Damien Martinez has that ability, that talent. I know that's kind of weird thinking about a guy that was that low of a draft pick, but he just fits what Seattle wants to do. So yeah. There's my.
And I would agree with that completely. And I would say to everyone watching, go watch his first 2 years at Oregon State to find out exactly what we're going to get with Damien Martinez, because they did run some wide zone stuff there, and you can see his agility. I mean, you'd mentioned he's not the most agile guy. I would disagree with that a little bit, at least with his early tape there in college at Oregon State. That's who he was. He gained a little bit of weight over time and became a little bit more of a physical runner, but he still has that movement ability. And I'm really kind of excited to see him. I think it's a great problem to have. I mean, all four of those guys that are going to make this roster in our prediction are guys that I feel pretty good about. I didn't feel so good about Kenny McIntosh before last season, but I think when he did have his opportunities, he came in and he ran hard. He ran a lot harder than I thought he would for his size. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's just an all-around good guy, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. All four guys can, really. And so I think it's, when you have a stated purpose and an identity that your head coach wants your team to have, and that's to be able to run the ball and run the ball effectively in a balanced offense, I feel really good about this group, like solid. There's not going to be any real drop off between those four guys. And that's kind of what you want out of a full season of banging around out there, and the history of Ken Walker not being able to make it through 17 games. It's a pretty good group. So let's go to the tight ends, and they kind of tie in with that fullback position a little bit. Let's talk about that, Keith. What are your thoughts overall on the tight end group? And is there a battle there for that third tight end at all, and the status of Fant?
I know you and I are kind of on opposite ends of this. You think Fant's a guy that might be out. I don't think at this point that's even in play. I think Elijah Arroyo, Noah Fant, and A.J. Barner are the guys. And sorry to the younger players that are on the roster, but they're not keeping more than three. That's certainly true. And I just don't. What would it take for this team to move on from Fant and let Elijah Arroyo just be the guy? Someone would have to give up a pretty decent draft pick to really make the Seahawks consider it. I believe they're just ready, and they know they need the weapon. Given that wide receiver's not as dynamic as it was a year ago.
Yeah, now let's talk about that little disagreement. And the only reason for that is you've got a guy like Robbie Oots that could give you some snaps, some inline snaps, even if you needed them at any point in the season. So you've kind of got that wild card there to feel better about the tight end room overall. You brought in a guy in free agency in Eric Sobert from the 49ers. So he's got experience in and around this sort of scheme. Elijah Arroyo, the draft pick, unproven so far, great upside, but he hasn't done anything on the field yet. Let's see if he can stay healthy. He's got an injury history. A.J. Barner, we know what we've got there. That's pretty solid, really solid, actually. And Noah Fant, while we're disappointed in his overall production and we feel like he could give you more, he still gives you something. He's got 45 receptions last year, 600 yards, just really lacking in that red zone conversion stuff and touchdowns, but overall fairly solid. The only reason I think you could move off of him, he's got a $9 million nut on his cap hit and that you could recoup fully. And then you've got his logical replacement on the roster already in Arroyo. Now, I'm not saying that he couldn't play out the full year and Arroyo just steps up next year and no offense, just not re-signed. That could happen. But you do have an opportunity there to move a player and still be pretty solid at the tight end spot overall. And you may get a 4th round pick. Now, I'm not saying you could get a 3rd or a 2nd for Noah Fant. I'm not sure about that, but I think somebody would flip you a 4th, take that cap hit off your roster, and it clarifies the tight end room. That's what I'm saying. It's not like I don't like Noah Fant. It's just that there is an intriguing opportunity there to move a player. One of the few on the roster that you could move, especially if it was a player for player swap in a trade. Say you went into a different position, and we'll talk about all of them, where you feel like you could use one more guy or one more solid player. That could be an opportunity to and one of the players that they might be able to move. That's it. But I agree with you as far as Noah Fant, AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo. That's going to be it. Eric Sobert, maybe they could get him to the practice squad. I'm not sure. He's got a fairly decent, solid history and special team stuff, though he may get picked off, I think. And then you've also got Robbie Oots that you can count as a tight end if you needed to. So, yeah, I agree with you on all that.
Okay.
Stuff.
The next is the first really intriguing battle that we haven't, that we get to talk about. And that would be wide receiver. There's a lot of players, but there's been a lot of turnover, and there's really one guy returning from last year that is a lock, and that would be JSN, Jaxon-Smith and Njigba. Everyone else is either new or not a lock. And so there's a lot of guys and probably 4 spots left to claim. And to me, this is going to be really fun and a lot of really fascinating as far as looking at what's going to happen here. And I'm going to let you start with this one. Like, how do you see this falling? How do you see this coming out?
Well, I mean, I do see the top 3 as being locks, and maybe even the top 4 if you count Horton. So Cooper Kupp's not going anywhere. The only reason that he would be in jeopardy at all would be if he got injured in training camp and they put him on some sort of injury list. Mm-hmm. And then the importance of those camp battles, I think, would even be heightened. I really do think the camp battles that they talk about are with that 5th and 6th spot potentially. I think they're going to carry 5. At least initially. They could be moving guys up and down, bring guys off of a practice squad, elevate them for game day. They could do some things like that. It's a pretty intriguing room talent wise, from wide receiver 6, 7, and 8. Let's talk about the top. So Cooper Kupp and Njigba, Scantling, and Horton for me are locks. So
yeah, really, I would agree with that. Horton will make the roster, whether he makes the roster as the number 4 guy or the number 5 guy, is questionable, but he will make the roster. They use the draft pick on him, just too much talent.
The only thing for me there is that he was injured, had that knee surgery, and he wasn't ready during mini camps, and nobody's talked about if he's going to be ready day 1 in training camp. They could put him on the pup and keep him there. Depending on that, and that could impact this conversation a little bit. The other guys that are going to be really fighting for spots are Steven Sims, a guy that they brought in, as a free agent. Cody White, he's hanging around still, for an opportunity. Ricky White III, our 7th round draft pick, and Tariq Young. And then Jake Bobo as well. So, he could definitely be viewed as a lock on this roster, depending on the coaching staff and how they view him. This is a new coaching staff for him. There's no loyalty to him as a player, and he's got to go out and prove himself again. And he lacks some of that top end speed that I think is intriguing for coaches and teams. He's going to have to show that he belongs because of his blocking, because of his special teams. And the way that the offense is designed, that he can get schemed open, because he's not, I don't think he has 4.9 speed like it's been reported, but he's got probably 4.6 speed. Mm-hmm. And, he's probably going to need to be schemed open, and that's fine. And we'll just see kind of how that works. But what do you think about the battles between Bobo, Tariq Young, Ricky White, Cody White, Steven Sims? Really, that's what it's going to be.
I mean, it really is. There's a couple other names you could throw in there: John Reese Plumlee, River Craycraft, and Tyrone Broden.
Craycraft is not on the roster anymore, by the way. They already cut him.
I did not see that. Okay, but Plumlee and Broden are. And so those are guys that, you've got that are fighting in there too. I would give the inside track to Ricky White, not just because he was a draft pick, but because of his return skills. And the team is lacking a punt returner and kick returner as far as that. Like that's a camp battle that has a lot of roster implications that we may, it's hard to look at because of how they fit into the positions, but he's got a guy that's there. Tariq Young's they got that fascinating, size speed combination, but he's never turned it into production with the Seahawks, and he's always been injured, and that's really part of why he hasn't turned it into production. And I think the team will take that into consideration, that he's probably a guy they can push through to the practice squad and then bring up when they need him. Cody White's been bouncing around the league a little bit. Started as a practice squad player last year, got himself onto the roster, but only had one game where he, was kind of had an impact. They could probably get him through the practice squad again. I mean, that's really kind of what it comes down to. It, that the top four are there. Could Jake Bobo get through to the practice squad? I don't know, given he's a known quantity as far as like the stuff that he does, special teams and blocking as a wide receiver, which he's really good at. So I don't know if they could get him through that. That one would be harder, but if Torrey Horton has passed him on the depth chart, is Jake Bobo going to get on the field enough for those skills to matter? Other than, as far as just blocking and stuff, or do you keep a guy like Ricky White that's got a much higher ceiling and can contribute right away as a kick and punt returner?
Agreed. Yeah, and then we'll just see how many of those guys make the practice squad, because this is the deepest position group heading into training camp. I mean, as far as just the sheer amount of players, and we'll see kind of how it plays out, and what importance I think that the wide receiver group ends up having on this roster and the team based on the scheme. I think it's more than we think it is. Not you and I necessarily, but in general, I think that the whole thought process of this thing as well, it's going to be on Sam Darnold, it's going to be on the running backs. No, the wide receivers are still very important. Sam Darnold is going to end up throwing the ball, 55 to 60% of the time. And
I think it'll be less than that, but yeah.
So you think the running is going to be 50-50?
I think it's going to, 55-45. I think 60%, unless this team is always behind, I think 60% would just, piss off Mike Macdonald to no end. So
yeah, it seemed like we were hovering around 35% run rate last year. It felt like less. It felt like 20% at most. On some games, it was. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get into the trenches. And honestly, for me, these are where the battles really matter. Like the other stuff is going to be okay. The best players are going to survive and win, and our roster is going to be good and solid. But this offensive line battle, tackles, guards, center, is really where the team needs to have somebody emerge at every spot and really kind of take it. Especially at guard and center. And so what are your thoughts on the offensive line, the scheme, who's going to make it, who's on the bubble, who could emerge, all that kind of stuff?
Well, this is actually, the projected starters, barring injury, Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, Gray Zabel, are going to be starting. Oluwatimi has the inside track over Jalen Sundell at this point, but don't count Sundell out. Oluwatimi has struggled to win camp battles as a pro, and while he's ended up as the starter at the end of the season, he's not, hasn't done a good job of starting there. And so maybe Sendel beats him out. That's a possibility. Oluwatimi is much better suited for this outside zone running scheme that the Seahawks are going to be using than he was for what they were doing before. So that actually might help him. But yeah, I mean, there's really a battle there between the two of them for who's going to start. I think absolutely. But I think they're both making the roster. You have to have a backup center, so that's fine. After the top two tackles, Michael Jarrell, we know is the team really liked him last year, even though he was a major project. He saw some playing time. It wasn't great, but that's what happens when you play a project. He needs to develop, and now he's had a whole nother offseason to work on that. And then Josh Jones as the swing tackle, the third tackle, but he can also play guard, is in there. So in some sense, like some of this is set, but beyond there, I mean, that's not a lot of names, right? We don't know if Christian Haynes is going to live up to his draft status and take that spot. We don't know if Anthony Bradford's supposed weight loss has generated enough movement skills, agility, footwork, those kind of things to make him viable in this scheme. Lumea, who's a guy that I think you and I have both been kind of high on as a guy who's been developing. He's got to pass some people on a depth chart in order to get on the field. They drafted a player in Bryce Cabledew who could push one of these guards off the roster. And then there's a bunch of other undrafted kind of unknown guys, Mason Richmond, Amari Knight, that could come in and surprise and just be like, you know what, you can't keep us off this roster. We're doing too well, too good. We're learning too fast for you to kick us off. So there's a lot going on with this group, and part of it is you're going to keep 9 of these guys, the 5 starters and 4 backups, and one of those backup spots is set with the center. 2 of them are probably set with Jarrell and Jones. So what does that give you? That gives you a couple of guards and a lot of names fighting for that spot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if they keep 5 wide receivers, they keep 10 offensive linemen, potentially. I see Charles Cross, Zabel, Oluwatimi, Anthony Bradford, Abe Lucas, Christian Haynes, Sundell, Bryce Cabledew, Mason Richmond, potentially. They did draft him, by the way. And Satoa Lamea as making the roster with the cuts, and Josh Jones potentially is like over Mason Richmond, kind of back end type stuff.
Well, I think he makes it because otherwise they've only got 3 tackles on the roster.
Yeah.
Right. And they signed Josh Jones to be that third tackle, that swing tackle, that guy that's available on game day to play any of the positions except for center.
Right. They just didn't pay him any money, so he is cuttable. They wouldn't be hurt if he was cut, but you're right. They do need him because they just lack other depth.
Yeah. Where do you, if they do, I mean, his contract is cuttable. That's what you're saying. And absolutely it is. But how do you manage if there's an injury or anything, if you don't keep him?
Yeah.
They would have
especially
to bring
right now, the tackle roster is Charles Cross, Lucas, Jarrell, Jones. And then you've got Amari Knight and Luke Felix Fualalo there. And that's it. You could move Mason Richmond back to a tackle if you needed to. So
well, Amari Knight's listed as a guard. So
interesting.
I have a hard time thinking that they're going to leave him or expect him to be out there at tackle if they're making him practice at guard every day.
Right. So okay. So how about the defense, Keith? What do we expect to see on the defense? How are you feeling heading into training camp? Obviously, we're coming off of an improving defense as we left last season. Where do you feel like they will be picking up directly from that, or will they kind of have to come back, reorganize, get with it, and emerge that first week, hopefully, or do they kind of work into being better?
I think that this is one of those situations where because you're bringing back all your starters, there's no reason to think that they can't hit the ground running where they were last year. Now, yeah, they've switched out some depth pieces and the rotations are going to be slightly different and all of that, but the talent is there, the communication was there, and those things just don't go away. So this team, like this defense, needs to be just not just needs to be. I fully expect them to be just ready to go, barring some major injury or two. This is a good group. The starters are there. The depth isn't great, but the talent certainly is, and that's what we're going to see. And so I think the expectations need to be high for the defense.
So you'd mentioned the idea that the depth isn't great. We're going to talk about all of that, but just an early conversation on this. What would this team look like if we had one or two injuries that really impacted the roster? Could this whole thing fall apart? Is that what you would be saying if the depth isn't there?
I'd say that the drop off could be. I mean, I wouldn't say that it would fall apart. They're not going to go back to being just dreadful, but that the quality could be hurt, and you would see the team like, if they lose one of their corners, they may have a harder time covering. They may have to blitz less. They may have to keep their strong safety back more, and have that overall mean that the other teams are committing or getting more third down conversions, and it's just not being elite anymore. I still think they'll be good. They'll be top half of the league, but this isn't. It's not an elite, top 3 defense, which is kind of what we're expecting. If guys stay healthy, or the injuries that happen at a couple positions where they have a little bit of depth, like maybe safety after Emanwari is up to speed, then I think they can. This defense can be kind of special.
So let's talk about the inside guys up front first at defensive tackle. Now, I'm disappointed, I'll say it up front, that this team went another season without really getting a true nose tackle on this team that would help like a guy like Byron Murphy move full-time to like 3-tech, where I think he can be most effective. Now they're going to be sharing this kind of load with undersized guys again on the inside. Obviously, I think Mike Macdonald feels like that strategy works for them because I think it's a little bit more fluid and multiple, and they can move guys around, and they feel pretty good about that strategy. What do you think?
Well, I think he knows that he can do it. They did it for a lot of last year. I mean, Jonathan Hankins was there, but he wasn't effective, and his playing time dropped off considerably once, when they had their full rotation. But you're right, they didn't find a replacement, so they brought him back. But they were looking for a replacement. They know. But if you've got to go without a nose tackle and you've got Jerron Reed and Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, you're okay with that because that's 3 quality players. And it's not ideal to not have a true nose tackle in there, but it's hard to be like, okay, they do have those 3 guys and you can put them all in the field at the same time and let them roll. And you could do far worse than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus you throw in Hankins for 10 snaps a game and it's not horrible.
Yeah. That's the problem though, is that that's kind of where you're at. I mean, if Quentin Bohanna or Brandon Peely, um, steps in and shows that they can handle, nose tackle responsibilities, um, we may see more of them in the center and allowing, the top three guys to, kind of rotate around more and play, have two out of the three on the field more. Hankins taking 10 to 15 snaps and maybe Bohanna getting 10 and calling that good. But this is what I mean by the depth, right? You have the top three, and then you've got Hankins, who we know is limited, and what's behind them? Where's the rotation?
Right.
There really isn't one at this moment. In part because they drafted Riley Mills, who I think was an absolute steal to get him as low as they got him in the draft. But the reason why they got him is because he's probably not going to play this year. He's currently on the non-football injury list. And being on the NFI means that if he doesn't play this year, it doesn't count towards a year of service. His contract just doesn't accrue, and he still goes in the following season as if he's a rookie. And that's a likely scenario for him. But if he does come back, if he does battle through this and heal and get through everything and get back on the field at some point in the season, which would be great for him, that's an improvement because there's no one else on the roster that is going to push for his roster spot.
Well, I think he does start the year on the and then and on the active roster, I think there's an opportunity for him. You're right, guys like Bohanna or back end guys like Anthony Campbell, J.R. Singleton, Bubba Thomas. One of those emerges, you start to feel a lot better about the position group, and they may not be done. This is one of those spots I think on the roster where we do fall a little short as far as the depth. And if one of these guys emerges, great. If not, this could be a spot where John Schneider isn't done yet, and they just kind of keep, they'll cut a guy out of camp, but they'll bring another guy back on that was cut from a different team, and until you get really the right mix, and we'll see what happens. How about
definitely I would say definitely watch the transaction list. Guys that are experienced, they've done it, they play at a high level, but their salary cap number has gotten out of hand, and then so teams are looking for an excuse to cut them. Those are the guys that John Schneider, if he knows he needs one, he'll go get one. I hope that they can wait until the guy gets cut and then sign him then, and not feel the need where they must use a draft pick to trade for a guy, because they don't have the same amount of draft capital next year as we're used to seeing them have. So I don't expect them to 5 picks
next year.
Yeah, I don't expect them to give up one of those picks on a rotational non-starter defensive tackle, unless they absolutely have to.
So, we always talk about interpositional camp battles, but what about the camp battle between the offensive line and the defensive line in training camp?
Oh, as far as like the day-to-day stuff, honestly, like that's going to be fun, because you're going to see guys like Byron Murphy lining up against Gray Zabel for those one-on-one snaps, and in the 11 on 11s and all of that. Like that's going to be fun, because Byron Murphy's in that second year. There's supposed to be with defensive linemen, there tends to be a lot of growth between year 1 and year 2, but Zabel's coming in as this really highly touted,
didn't lose a snap at the Senior Bowl against really decent guys too. So
against SEC level guys and whatever. Like he just dominated there. I think that's gonna be fun to watch those guys go. Now, I would be surprised if Leonard Williams comes in and makes a few guys look bad, because Leonard Williams makes a lot of guys look bad, even on Sundays. But even then, he's going to be given a chance. Great Zabel, here, block this guy. Don't let him past you. And we get to see, how he does against, the best of the best. It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun.
So who do you expect to win those battles?
I would say the defense is going to win a lot of them. If Abe Lucas's knee is truly as healthy as, we're being led to believe, him and Zabel are going to be able to hold their own against anybody. Charles Cross, can too, but that he's a little more susceptible at times to guys like Leonard Williams. And then after that, besides those three guys, I expect the defense to dominate. It's the nature of where Seattle's offensive line is as a group. Oluwatimi just does not stand up one-on-one against players of that quality. And we don't even know what to expect from the right guard guys because none of them have ever shown that they've been good at this level. So,
well, at least we have a coaching staff now that is going to help them scheme to be better. Like last year, they were kind of left on an island. Our blocking scheme was straight ahead, power blocking. You guys had to move the guys straight in front of you and then drop back into protection. And there was no play action help. There was nothing.
There's no play action
scheme wise to help them. Everyone knew what the defense was going to do. And they did it against our offense. We just had no experience there, and they took advantage of that. This year, it's going to be much different. I think having Benton coach the offensive line and really help them figure that out is going to make a huge difference, even against our own guys in practice.
Yeah, and then there were some of the retired guys, the kind of the old guard of the offensive line that are still around. Doing interviews and being an analyst and stuff now, we talked about just how badly the coaches mistreated the Christian Haynes situation and just completely screwed that up in the way that he was handled. And now you've got a guy like John Benton who's been around for 33 years and isn't going to do that.
Develop young players.
Yeah, isn't going to do that kind of nonsense. Like they're going to actually teach the kid and get out of him what he's capable of. And that's part of why I think I'm more excited about him than most people, because I still see the talent. I still see why they drafted him, why we were excited for him a year ago, even though he did nothing last year. And now, but you put him with a coach that actually cares, that actually is going to, do what's necessary to get this kid to develop and be ready to play. And that's the kind of thing that he needs. And
like it or not, for him last year, he got a year. Like he's a veteran now. He's a guy that went through the process last year, kind of gets it, understands what he needs to do, had a full off season with the new coaching staff and the training room, getting functionally stronger, all that stuff. I haven't heard really anything about him in the off season, which is generally a good thing. And so hopefully all of that happened and he comes in and just kind of dominates and takes over. I mean, that would be the best case scenario. If he's more of an Oluwatimi type who can't win a camp battle and can't dominate from the beginning and it's still a competition in week 3 of training camp, then I think we have an issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we still have no idea what to expect from Bradford, because what we've seen in the past, his skill set, his body was absolutely not suited for the scheme. And I know he and the coaches are trying to sell everyone on, oh, he's slimmed down, he's more agile, blah, blah, blah. Totally. We'll see it when it happens on the field. I mean, we're in what I like to call best shape of my life season, because you'll hear that from every player. Oh yeah, they're coming into camp in the best shape of their life. Every single player is doing that apparently, because that's what they all say. And we'll see what actually happens with Bradford and whether any of that's real or if all of it is fluff, which is highly likely because that's what happens every year, is we get a lot of that nonsense. But yeah, if Haynes, whose body is designed more for this scheme, Um, can't beat out a guy like Bradford by week 3. And Bradford's a guy whose body is absolutely not suited for this scheme. Then that's a concern. I mean, that may tell you that the Christian Haynes experiment may be coming to an end.
So let's talk about the edge rushers. How do you feel about this room? It starts off with Boye and Mafe, but we had a key addition, I think, a veteran presence in this room that not necessarily getting to the quarterback, but setting the edge and really kind of just setting the tone as a leader, potential leader on this defense.
Marcus Lawrence, yeah. I
And
like
Nwoso, by the way, is on the pup list to begin again.
To begin, he'll be there. And don't discount Derek Hall too. I think those 4 guys give you a solid rotation of edge rushers. You have 4 guys that you can depend on. DeMarcus Lawrence might be the stoutest against the run. But Hall and Mafe showed last year that neither one of them is a liability in that idea. Uchenna Nwoso might be the best pure pass rusher of the group, but he's hurt, and Hall and Mafe are no slouches at that either. So it's a good group. It's a diverse group. It's probably the position on the team where they have the best depth, because you are 4 deep, and that's before you get to any of the guys that might develop into something, guys you don't know much about, and that's fun. That's why we do this. I mean, you got guys in there that are battling for a roster spot, hoping that they keep 5, and they're going to be fighting for special team snaps and that kind of stuff. And you got to throw in a guy like Jared Ivey into the mix. And I know that he was an undrafted, an undrafted player, but he had a draftable grade. He was a guy that honestly looked like a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And, for a couple of reasons he fell and ended up not getting drafted, but there's talent there. There's talent that suggests that, if put in the right system in the right situation, that you could get a lot out of a player like that. And so they're going to want to try and keep him. So yeah.
I have a question for you. So he was supposedly came in around 285, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And this group as a whole is around, 255.
260. Yeah.
260. And so what do you do with him? Do you add weight to him and get him as more of a 3-tech guy?
I think, yeah. Honestly,
or do you let him drop
probably what
weight?
I would do. I would actually get him, because where do you need help the most? Where you need help the most is at defensive end, right? 3 and 5 tech. And at 280, he's probably a little small for that. But if you get him to 290, he can handle that 5 tech role. At 280, he's probably too big for an outside linebacker. But if he drops to 270, he could probably handle it, especially against the run. You just don't want him dropping back into pass coverage. And so he's kind of that tweener. He could be kind of either. It really comes down to, how does the team view him, and what has he been doing since draft day,
right?
With his body, and what did they want him to do? We'll see when we get information about where he was at when he checked into camp.
That's why I listed him initially as a defensive end, because Riley Mills is probably going to start the year on injury reserve and may not emerge this season. And that's where he's got the best shot to make the roster, is right there, right in that spot as the 4th defensive end. Now, when you mention him as an edge, I'm not sure. I mean, he's got some attributes. He can rush the quarterback. He's more of an edge setting kind of guy. But so was Boye Mafe when he first started as well. And if he can trip down to like even 270, may get him in the range where he could be multiple for the team. He could play a little inside for you. He could play outside. He could rush the passer. He could drop in coverage a little bit because he's got, he dropped a little bit of weight. He's an intriguing player for me. I'm interested to find out what he's all about. Or he could be cut. Literally, he could be cut the first week of training camp because they just don't see a spot for him on the roster, and they're going to give him an opportunity to go out and find another team. He could be an early cut camp casualty, and I wouldn't blink an eye. I've seen it before from players that you expect, even undrafted guys, to be in the equation on final cut downs, and they just end up not working for whatever reason. He could be on that list too. I don't know.
And he's a guy that is kind of a tweener. He needs to go one way or the other, and it kind of depends on how the team sees him and where the team's needs are, and that kind of stuff. So he's a guy that we'll be watching. They've got other guys. We've been waiting for Tariq Smith to finally pop for 3 years now, and it hasn't happened. So, but he's around. We saw some really good things from Jamie Sheriff a year ago in training camp and in the preseason, and then he didn't make the roster, but he's back. But he's also a guy that's going to be multiple. He's going to be an edge rusher, and he's going to be a backup inside linebacker. So we'll see how that transpires. So there's different things going on, and we'll see. So, but the top 4 guys, assuming that Mafe that Nwoso gets healthy enough to be ready to roll when rosters are set, the top 4 guys are set, and there's maybe one more spot.
I was certainly disappointed to see his name on a pup list, Nwoso, because my goodness, come on. I mean, you had from mid-January until this moment to be healthy, and he's been just hurt, and he reduced his salary this year, even just to kind of stay on the roster and have an opportunity, and then come into camp injured again is disappointing.
Well, I mean, saying coming into camp injured, we've seen guys come into camp, they get put on the pup list when they start, and they're off the pup list and on the field less than 24 hours later. Sometimes it's just a matter of, they come in, you've got 89 other guys, and the doctors didn't have a chance to put you through the full physical yet. We'll see. Since you haven't passed the physical, you're on the pup list. We will see. I'm saying, don't assume that it's anything serious just because he's on the pup list to start. There'll be a bunch of guys there with him.
Okay, so there's 2 positions in the middle of this defense that are extremely important to Mike Macdonald's scheme in defense. And one of them seems to fall short, Keith. And you mentioned it up front, the middle linebacker group. We're really good, very good. One of the top 10, I think, middle linebacking starters in the NFL in Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. It's the depth after that's concerning. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. There's literally nothing behind them. Those guys are your starters, and if one of them were to get hurt, you are going to see this team in the nickel a ton, just so that way they don't have. Yeah, but I mean, you're going to see this. The team may never come out of the nickel if one of those guys got hurt, just simply because.
Or Nick Manwari will never come off the field, I think, is what would happen.
Well, yeah, that would be what happens, is that you'd have a second strong safety in there rather than an inside linebacker, because you just don't have anything behind him. I mean, John Ross is there, and then Drake Thomas, and both of those guys are undersized guys that don't give you much on defense, but are there because they're special teams players. There isn't a true backup on this roster that's ready to, come in and make plays if the starters go down. It was bad enough that they've taken Jamie Sheriff, who's an edge player, a pass rusher, and said, yeah, we're going to make him learn how to play inside linebacker in training camp, because we need someone. And they don't trust uh, the other guys. Patrick O'Connell's still around, but he doesn't have the athleticism to uh, really kind of do the things that are necessary in a 3-4. But he is a good tackler. He's a very sure tackler. Does some special teams things, so he's still around. And then you've got some undrafted free agents. Connor O'Toole is a guy I'm interested to see in camp. I think he's probably not making the roster, but I just am intrigued by him. And there's a couple other guys, but yeah, after the top two, it's rough. The drop off is very steep.
Yeah, we could see some activity. It's so steep. I think we could see some activity on this group by the time the regular season kickoff comes around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would definitely be the sore spot for me on this team currently as constructed. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about the defensive backs. Let's start with the safeties. You mentioned this is one of your feel good position groups.
It is
on the defense. Talk to me about it.
I mean, Kobe Bryant last year didn't start the year, as a starter, but worked his way onto the field, beat out a veteran that they had brought in specifically to, kind of hold down that position. And Bryant was like, nope, sorry, not going to happen. Got himself on the field, played really well, played at a really high level. And then you got Julian Love, who's like kind of the unsung hero of this defense. He's that guy that doesn't get the press as being an elite player, but is a Pro Bowler, and is a Pro Bowler at two different positions, free safety and strong safety. He's totally multiple and can do either for you. And so, those two guys as your top two, you're in great shape. Like those were the guys that were the top two when Seattle's defense was really good in the last 9 games. And then you add an athletic, just freak, just absolute unicorn in Nick Amwari with his combination of size, speed, and the way he hits people and all of that. Like, how do you keep him off the field? I just seriously, how do you keep him off the field? But he's your third safety.
That's why we're not overly concerned about the linebacker spot and Tyrese Knight.
Yeah, because if you
Because
have to, you just let Nick Amwari be a starter, and you run with 3 safeties all the time. You run big nickel as your base defense.
yeah, and he can move around and take snaps at that second linebacker spot. I mean, he can, and so if you had to, you just would. Yeah. How do you keep him off the field? And Kobe Bryant and Julian Love are there. There's going to be a lot of that big nickel stuff, and Tyrese Knight's coming off the field. It just is what it is.
And even behind those top 3, they brought in DeAnthony Bell. He's a special team standout, but has considerable playing time, as a defensive player, not just a special teams player. And you're still waiting, hoping that Jarek Reed finally is healthy enough during a training camp that you get out of him what you expected when you drafted him a couple years ago, because he's a guy with some talent and can do a lot of fun things as a free safety, as a nickel corner. You can move him around in a lot of different ways too. And then you've got, AJ Finley and Tyakota. They're also battling, and we've seen Tyakota on special teams. He's like a freaking missile going down. So he's one of those guys that can be hard to keep off a roster, because you've got to have those gunners that can get downfield and clobber punt returners, and he's one of those guys. So the depth is significantly better at this position group than the other ones we've talked about on the defense.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited to see these guys and how Mike Macdonald uses them. That'll be, and especially Nick Amwari. Like, we just haven't, like, Devon Witherspoon is the closest player we have on the roster to Nick Amwari, and he's 30 pounds lighter and not as fast. And You know what I mean? I mean, Nick Manwari has 4.38 speed. I think Devon Witherspoon has like 4.44 speed type of thing. So it's and the agility and the size weight combo, and you mentioned the hitting and the way he fills in, and the instincts of Nick Manwari is just going to be an addition to an already outstanding position group and a defense. It's just going to make us better.
And Manwari is 4 inches taller and 28 pounds heavier, almost 30 pounds heavier than Witherspoon. But athletically, they're similar as far as like their speed, agility, that kind of stuff. Like it's crazy.
It is nuts. It's nuts.
It absolutely is. So
yeah, it'll be a fun group. So let's talk about the corners. And we've talked about the corners recently because we had our position group conversation about corners. Just kind of reiterate that for me and kind of wrap this thing up on the defensive side.
Well, I mean, you look at, you got Witherspoon, who's your Pro Bowler. He's your number one. The team likes to move him all over, not just stick him on the outside and leave him there, but he'll follow around the elite corners, the elite wide receivers when they need him to. But they also want him to make it look like he's doing that, but then he rushes the passer and he comes up. He's super physical and he just does everything. He's literally their Swiss Army knife back there who does everything at an extremely high level. And everything kind of starts with him. Opposite him is Reek Woolen, who's tall, he's long, he's super fast, and covers well, but hasn't been as physical as you'd expect a guy from his size to be since his rookie season, ever since he had that shoulder injury. And they're hoping that they can, get that back out of him again. Because if he goes back to being physical like it was as a rookie, he was a Pro Bowler that year. And there's no reason to think that he can't play at a high Pro Bowl level again. So they're really, really strong as their first two. After that, it drops off a little bit. I mean, they did bring in Quill Griffin again. They brought him back. Was a longtime starter for Seattle before they let him go to big contracts elsewhere. But now he's back as the third corner. He'll probably come in and play on the outside, and they'll kick Witherspoon into the nickel if they go to 3 cornerbacks and not 3 safeties for their nickel, or he'll be the fourth. The extra defensive back, the 6th defensive back. When they go to the dime. And so he'll get a lot of playing time there, but he's actually battling Josh Jobe, who won the battle last year, beat out Trey Brown, a former draft pick who the team really liked and had seen really good things from. But, Jobe made, or is it Joby? They made Brown expendable, and they let Brown walk. And so Joby's kind of back thinking that, he's going to be the third corner, but they've got Quill there to compete with them. And so top 4, they feel really good about the top 4. And then it's just behind them. Jeremiah Pritchett, draft pick from a year ago. Was a 5th round pick. He's got tons of speed. We'll see if he has a little more oomph than that. They signed Shamar Gene Michaels to come in and give him some help. Demarion Williams is there to give him some help at the position. And then a guy that is really interesting, I think, just from an athletic standpoint, and we'll see if any of it translates on the field, and that would be Isis Waxter, who's freaking huge for the position. And you floated the idea of converting him to a safety, and I wouldn't be against it. Just let him be defensive back and let him play wherever they need him. And he can. And
then Zay Alexander as well.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I skipped right over Zay Alexander, who they drafted.
No, they didn't draft, but he should have been drafted.
Oh, I guess you're right. He was undrafted. I can't believe he was undrafted. There's a couple guys. There's always a couple guys every year that you're like, how did that guy not get drafted? Yeah. And this year,
he was one of the most intriguing undrafted guys in the entire process.
Him and
Seattle
Jared
landed him.
Ivey are the two guys that are you just like, how did those guys not get drafted? Like, it's cool that there was Seattle, but it's there's always guys like that you're just left confused. And then of course they go and they do good things at the pro level. The last player that I felt like that about that's in, with Seattle was Puna Ford, where it was just absolutely absurd to me that he didn't get drafted. I had him with a fourth round grade. Really, it would have been significantly higher had he not, been 5'11". And all he's done is have a fantastic career. And Zay Alexander's kind of got that similar, like what the hell? Why did he not get drafted? And Jared Ivey too. And so yeah, both those guys are really intriguing. I like Seattle's defensive backs as much as I was saying, the depth is a problem and all of that. If a guy were to get hurt, if as long as it's not Devon Witherspoon, they could probably ride that and be okay. I mean, if Reek Woolen goes down, Shaq Griffin Quill Griffin just gets more, more playing time, and Nick Imanwari gets more playing time, right? And that kind of stuff.
And one of
So
those
they
young
can make
guys
it work.
steps up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a fantastic problem to have. I think the team carries 5 corners just based on the other composition on the roster, especially with
5 corners is yeah. I think they carry 9 defensive backs. So
plus practice squad stuff.
Plus practice squad stuff. So is it 5 corners and 4 safeties, or is it do they try and go 6 corners and 4 safeties and steal from inside linebacker because there's no talent there anyway? So why keep a guy who isn't going to play that you absolutely don't want on the field? I don't know. But the safety is probably the deepest, the strongest position as a whole on the defense. Corners probably third, I would say, besides edge rusher. But those are the 3 positions that are solid, and everyone else is like, please nobody get hurt, right?
So
yeah.
The storyline, the overriding storyline outside of Seattle by the entire NFL is Seattle's not going to be good. We're going to finish 3rd or 4th in our division. We'll be lucky to get to 7 or 8 wins. And it's just confounding to me. We went through this entire roster really pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. There's really nothing that on the roster, starter wise, that would indicate to you that we're going to be a bad team at all. And the depth wise conversation that we just had, it points to a couple areas, but also you're always going to have a couple weaknesses on your roster. I would argue the weakness at inside linebacker, on our roster and defensive tackle. The defensive tackle thing worked out last year. Like, we were a pretty decent defensive line overall at the end of last year. We've got the same guys coming back. I would argue that you can hide deficiencies on the defense really well. Like, there's enough to pull from other position groups and make it work. I'm not worried at all about the defense and the depth. And the offense line, is
if people stay healthy, because last year there was a point early in the season where they had to go trade for a guy that honestly was nothing more than a rotational piece, because they just simply couldn't. There were too many snaps and not enough bodies on game day, and guys were playing that had no business being on the field, and it showed. The defense was terrible, and then of course guys got healthy, and things worked really well. But you've got to have some depth there, and the lack of it is, to me, it is concerning, because if you have if a guy rolls an ankle and can't play for a game, you have no rotation. You're asking guys to play like 90% of the snaps, and it just doesn't work. So I actually am concerned by the lack of depth there.
I'm hoping for somebody to emerge, really.
Yeah, I expect them to find a guy. I don't expect the defensive, the defensive line. I don't believe it is a done position group. I think they'll be adding someone, or a guy like Quentin Bahama will show up, and you'll be like, "All right, whoa, we did not realize that he was going to demand playing time as a nose tackle. That
Right.
if it's short yardage, goal line, you need a guy to stop the run and plug the middle. You've got one, and I don't know if it's him or whatever, but someone has to do that. Someone has to show up and be like, "Whoa, we would not expect this guy to be good, and yet here he is." Or they're going to go get someone.
So, prediction. What emerges as the biggest storyline out of training camp in 2025 when it's all said and done?
The biggest the biggest storyline out of training camp in 2025 is going to be Jalen Mills. He's already the biggest
Jalen
storyline.
Milroe.
Milroe, yeah. Like, I'm sorry, there's no other option. He's the guy.
It's going to be a very intriguing option.
Because he's going to come in, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he does. He's exciting. And because he's quarterback, the ball's in his hands. He's exciting. He's running around. He's making linebackers look foolish trying to tackle him. Everyone's going to be excited. He's going to be the storyline. I really think that now, whether that translates to actual, meaningful snaps and stuff on Sundays once the games start counting, I don't know. But in camp, absolutely, it's going to be Jalen Milroe.
So if it's such a big and prominent and obvious storyline, how do you prevent it from being a distraction? There's a fine line there.
I think that you can either just constantly be saying, "Hey, it's fun, enjoy it, it's fun," but he's got a lot of work to do, and you just keep harping on that. Or what I've seen other teams do in situations like that is they just kind of lean into it a little bit. Is they allow it to be fun. They talk about how it's going to be fun, and all
what
of
they're
that.
going to do with that, with the packages. Like, we're designing some stuff here, and he'll get his opportunities.
And you let it do that, and you let it just take the pressure off a guy like Sam Darnold. And so everyone's looking, hey, look over here, this shiny thing. And Sam Darnold has a chance to just settle in, work, not have to have the spotlight on him while he's learning, and just prepare. And you just kind of know it comes down to what you're doing, what you're saying internally when you've got the quarterbacks in the room, and like, hey, just so this is how we're playing it. This is what we're doing with this. We got to keep, we got to kind of manage expectations, or hey, we're just going to let them get excited. It's cool. It's fun. And, Jalen's into it. But as a group, and Milroe would be involved in that, we know this is Sam's team. And, so let them have their fun, but we're going to focus on getting Sam ready to play. And as long as Milroe's okay with that too, then sure, lean into that and do that. I've seen teams handle it in both ways. I've seen teams handle it poorly. And then you end up with like a quarterback controversy that shouldn't be there. But
are you at all afraid of that with this group and with this team and head coach?
I am not with the head coach and team that they have. They won't let it get there. I think that anything that's coming from outside the team, the stuff from the fans and the media, whatever, isn't gonna affect them. The only thing that concerns me is if Sam Darnold goes out there and struggles in camp, is just not getting the offense, not putting the ball where it needs to be, not seeing the things he needs to be seeing, making the right reads, all of that. And Milroe's just out there putting on a show, not in his sub package, but just running the offense. You might have guys in the locker room start to be like, why don't we just play the kid? He's so much more dynamic. Let's just play the kid. And once the guys in the room, in the locker room start asking the question, that's when you start to have problems. Because if they're questioning, who's playing, then I mean that's something that matters. But the right situation has to happen for that to be a problem here. You have to have Sam Darnold really struggle, and you have to have Milroe really just explode.
It could
Otherwise, I think
happen. It could happen, right?
it absolutely could happen. But at the same time, you need that right set of events in order for it to happen. And then it's up to the coach to handle it, right? Pete Carroll was in a similar situation back in 2012, right? When they drafted Russell Wilson, and they had a guy who was getting the job done in camp, not being dynamic but being steady. But then you've got Russell Wilson just lighting it up, and you have guys in the locker room starting to be like, "Let's just play the kid. He's more
obviously
dynamic.
the better player, right?
He might struggle here in the beginning, but he's by the end of the season will be significantly better if we just play Russ." And Pete waited and let the thing play out, but then eventually made the right call and went with the younger player. And it worked out. It worked out great for the Seahawks.
It didn't work out great.
Yeah.
So it is.
And so
you're right. I think it's the biggest storyline. I mean, it just is. It's like all of the things that we just talked about are things that could potentially happen or not happen. It's one of those things where it's going to be like, okay, we have to devote 10 minutes to each of our shows for the next 2 months on the Jalen Milroe watch. Like, okay, what happened? Where's he at? What did he do? How is the team reacting? What Sam Darnold is doing? Does it add up? Like, are we witnessing something that is going to change this franchise for a long time? I mean, the intrigue there is just so overwhelming. Or he just progresses like a normal backup quarterback, and we go into the season, Sam Darnold does his thing. Next year, we have a bigger conversation because Jalen Milroe would have that entire development year and be ready to compete for a starting role. That would be way more likely. But there's so many other variables in this thing, though, that at this moment, anything could be possible, and you just kind of have to let it go, let it play out, and see what happens.
What's much more intriguing to me would be, okay, they've got packages, they've got they're going to give Milroe 3 to 5 plays a game where he comes in and in the Wildcat and does some fun things and whatnot, and it's working. It's exciting. They're doing stuff, and then Sam Darnold has to miss a game for an injury, right? He gets hit hard, there's a concussion, he has to sit out a week. Do you just run with Milroe as your starter? Or does Drew Lock come in and do you stay the course with Milroe as the gadget player, the package, that kind of stuff, or do you roll the dice and be like, well, let's see
depends on whether or not Milroe earned it. In practices and where the team's at with him and the language.
I know, but to me that's the kind of thing where it's like that's when it gets the most interesting, because I don't think Sam Darnold's going to let there be a question. I think he's going to do what he needs to do to make sure that people aren't doubting him. He's the starter. And Milroe is going to do a lot of fun things, but they're going to be fun things in sub packages, not in just running the offense. And people in the room and in the media, for the most part, are going to be able to see the difference. They're going to be able to see that Milroe is super exciting, but he's not running the full offense. But if it's no longer a choice between those two, if it becomes a choice between Milroe and Locke, who gets those snaps when they have to, I think that's when it becomes really intriguing, because
it comes down to trust, right?
Yes,
it's like,
it really
especially
does.
if we're 5-1 when Sam Darnold goes down versus we're 3-6 or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you're 3-6 and your season's virtually almost done, and your quarterback is gone for, let's just say, 3 weeks, you've got an opportunity to develop your rookie, and he's already been in the system for 9 weeks now. Week 10, you just run him out there and you give him the rest of the season to get experience and to hopefully shine, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's all development. It's all about getting an opportunity to to prep as a starter, to go through practices as a starter, to see what he needs, to see what he's seeing, and learn in the tape room, the film room, the next week from the stuff that he saw, and just to learn the speed of the game and all of that. Because if you're 3-6 and you lose your quarterback, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. So just go play the kid. But you're right. If you're 5-1 and you lose your quarterback and he's going to come back, you just need someone to like hold it down and whatever. You got Drew Lock sitting there. You trust him. It's the only reason why you brought him back and paid him what you paid him, was because you trust him. You run him out there and let him see if he can keep the ship floating until Darnold gets back.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, it's going to be a fun camp. And we're going to talk about it as it goes on. We'll have training camp updates throughout, and we'll talk about our pregame and postgame analysis on the preseason games as well. So we're getting into kind of regular season mode as this thing rolls forward. So thank you, Keith, for coming in, and great analysis and discussion, and looking forward to this thing for sure.
Yeah. Where I was to say, we're back to watching players play football on a football field. No more of this like off-season stuff. Let's go watch football. I'm excited.
You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hawk, the show Seahawks Playbook podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms and our YouTube channel. And until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.